Imagine this. You've spent years building a podcast, and suddenly, a high-profile celebrity launches a show with exactly the same name. This is a perfect example of why you need to think carefully when naming your podcast. But if you do find yourself in this kind of situation, don't panic. There are ways to deal with it, and we're going to cover it right now in this episode.
Podmaster!
Welcome to Podcasting Insights with the Podmaster. I am the Podmaster, Neil Velio, delighted to help podcasters like you, whether indies or brands, to get more from their podcast efforts. So picture the scene. You got this brand new high-profile podcast that's just launched. Maybe they've got a fancy production house behind them, a big PR budget, and the kind of media attention you can only dream of. And your little show's been going for a while with modest response from the public. I mean, yeah, you get downloads, for sure. But you're not getting the hundreds of thousands of downloads that you're certain this new podcasty imposter is going to be getting. That's exactly what's happened to the lads behind In My Opinion, or IMO, a UK podcast that's been running since 2020. In an article featured in the website YourWeb, which I've linked to in the episode description, by the way, they say they found themselves up against IMO with Michelle Obama and Craig Robinson, a podcast with the kind of brand power that could push them into search engine oblivion. And understandably, they're fuming. It's not funny. Honestly, we've all been there. Here's why your podcast name is a bigger deal than you might think. A podcast name isn't just a name. It's your brand, it's your identity, and it's a key part of how people find you. Get it wrong, and you could be making life much harder for yourself. Here's why. A good name helps you stand out. I mean, let's be honest about it. The podcast world is crowded. Even though we don't have the 4.5 million podcasts that everyone cringes about, the truth of the matter is that number is far lower, closer to around 43,000. That said, a unique name makes it easier for people to remember you amongst that crowd. It prevents confusion. If your show shares a name with someone more famous, guess whose show turns up first in search. It impacts your podcast SEO. If another podcast with a bigger reach uses your name, Google will prioritize them, much like the apps will too. Also, it avoids legal and branding headaches. While you don't have to trademark your name, not checking if someone else already has the same name could land you in trouble. But let's be real, sometimes even if you have done your research, someone else comes along and makes your life difficult anyway, because they can. So in that event, what do you do? Here's what to do if someone else uses your podcast name. If you wake up one day and find your podcast name is suddenly being used by someone with a much bigger platform, here's exactly how I'd suggest you handle it with Podmastery. First of all, work out if this is actually a problem. Before you start drafting an angry email, take a step back for a moment and think, is this really harming your podcast? Are your listeners confused? If your audience already knows you, they're not going to mix you up with someone else, are they? Is your traffic dropping? Check your analytics. If your show's still getting regular listens, it might not be worth the stress. Is there actual brand confusion? If people are DMing you asking if you've gone corporate, then yeah, you might have an issue. Other than that, if none of those are true for you, then maybe it's just a mild annoyance rather than an actual problem. But if it's affecting your growth and getting you down, you will need to take action. Here's how you do that. Turn it into a PR win. A big name celebrity has accidentally given you an opportunity to get noticed? Oh my god. Brilliant! It's a gift from the podcasting gods. Use it! Make some noise on social media. A funny, sassy book and natured post about the situation could grab attention and get people on your side. And for something like this, I would highly recommend you reach out to James Cridland at Pod News. He loves these kinds of stories, and he would definitely publish it for you, taking your side, I suspect. Spin it into an underdog story. Now, people love rooting for the little guy, regardless of who they are. It's the whole David versus Goliath thing. Lean into it. Pitch it to the media. If journalists are covering the big name podcast, they might also be interested in your story as well. I mean, it's another step forward in their story arc. If handled correctly, this could actually boost your profile rather than harm it. Here's another thing you could do. Reach out, but be smart about it. If the name confusion is actually serious and it's harming your growth, consider reaching out to the other party. Be firm, but not confrontational. Nobody likes an aggressive email that's getting sent straight to the recycle bin. Explain why this is a problem for you. If you have a trademark, mention that. If it's causing confusion, provide examples of that. Suggest a solution. Maybe they could tweak their branding slightly or clarify the difference between their podcast and yours. Agree that you will also clarify the difference between your podcast and theirs. The truth is, most big names don't want negative press, so if you approach this in the right way, you may well get a positive outcome. No guarantees, but it's worth a try. Another thing you can do, strengthen your own brand. If you do decide to keep your podcast name and make sure nobody confuses you with a new one, double down on your branding. Update your podcast artwork, your social media channels, and your website to make your show unmistakable. Be sassy about it. Say, it's this IMO, not that IMO. Or use a subtle differentiator. Say something like the original IMO podcast or IMO UK. That will help set you apart. And as always, optimize your SEO. Make sure your website and social profiles are ranking first when people are searching for your podcast's name. If all else fails, consider a rebrand. Nobody wants to change their podcast name, but if the alternative is being drowned out by a celeb, it might be worth considering. You could spin it as a positive change. Frame it as an evolution, not a defeat. Involve your audience. Let them help you pick the new name. It'll make them feel invested in the transition, and you'll get an idea for how much engagement your podcast is getting and how much support is out there for it. Make the rebrand a big deal. Announce it with a marketing push and treat it like an exciting relaunch. Tie it into some PR that connects to the previous story that you'd already sent out about how this other podcast had nicked your name. Trust me, the story's way bigger that way. Some of the biggest brands in the world have rebranded and come out of it stronger. Your podcast could too. Let's talk about other podcasts that have had name clashes and survived. See, this isn't the first time two podcasts have shared a name, and it won't be the last. Here are a few examples. Untapped. Oh my god, so many podcasts exist under this name, covering topics like beer and business. Nobody's fighting about that. The Pit Wall. Various motorsports podcasts share this name, but they each cater to different segments of the audience. Rabbits is a fiction podcast that shares its name with other media, yet still has a strong brand identity. So the lesson here is, a name does help your podcast, but content, branding, and consistency are way more important. It's true, a podcast name is important, but it's not the be-all and end-all of your success. Whether you decide to fight for your name, use the conflict to your advantage, or pivot to something stronger, the real key to growth is building a podcast people love to listen to. It doesn't matter what name your podcast has, if you're putting out sludge, you're going to get a sludgy response. If you ever find yourself in a situation like IMO, don't panic, get strategic. Play it right, and you might even end up better off than you were before. If you found this episode useful, hit follow and share it with a mate who might be going through exactly this same trouble. And then look out for another episode of Podcasting Insights with the Podmaster showing up in your library really soon.
The Podmaster is a Podnose production. Find out more about us at podnose.co.uk.
Podnose.